this isn't actually going to do too much because it has to be connected to the whole system, and it's just a backup, so not all the plugins are working. I just kind of got it just to show you guys, but it's the session from Plastic Man. So I'll just explain kind of how we ended up setting it up. So you have the first 4 channels, which are MIDI notes, and for drums and sounds, you've got your 303s. Usually I'm using like 2 per track, but we've got 4 channels just so that I can mix, and if I'm in one track and I want to combine, I can do that. We've got some other sounds, wave stations, samples. Then you start getting into a little bit of the interesting things. Got your touch tracks. This has actually been updated. You have 24 here. The new version has 64. And these are direct MIDI to OSC conversions. And this goes specifically to the Touch Designer computer for visual. So each of these would be connected to different visuals and different songs. And so when I move a MIDI fader or whatever, something will happen. And a lot of times what you'll see is these MIDI assignments down here are also assigned to other things throughout the set. So when I bring the send up, or when I bring a filter sweep, that's also sending something over to the visual computers to do something. You know, filter sweep on a sound, a sweep between blue and green, or opening up a circle on the screen, things like that. Then there's this great plugin, DMX-IS, which is, it basically gives you a plugin in Ableton, which works with MIDI, and each of those faders correspond to the 512 faders in the DMX protocol. We have an assignment map of 512 channels. And again, as the example I said the other day, in one of the songs we have these 808 rim shots, and they trigger on the visuals this kind of like flashing, white flashing in a blue background. The rim shot triggers the rim shot sample. It also gets converted to OSC, which goes to the visual computer and tells the visual computer to do this white look. And at the same time, it goes through DMX-IS and makes basically one of these channels go up and down every time the rim shot is hit, which goes to the lighting board, which does it on the lighting board, which is assigned to a strobe light. So quickly you have a sound, a light, and a visual all interacting real time. But if I change the rhythm of those rim shots, if I mute them, change them to 64 notes, 8 notes, whatever, you'll hear and see and feel the different live. So that's kind of where I'm in between pre-programmed and live. The plugin works, but we needed to take MIDI notes and tell a MIDI note to actually do something with the DMX plugin. So to make that work, we had to actually make our own Maxer Live MIDI to DMX converter. So that I have on my MIDI, my main MIDI mix of all my drums, I have a sender, and it sends that MIDI information to this plugin, and that takes each note from 0 to 127 and converts it to the fader 0 to 127, which is then mapped on the lighting control board. Kind of got it? It works great, but we're running the whole show with pure analog signal paths. Of course, everything is done mixed or generated in the computer. The 303s are plugins. A lot of the drums, you'll see in a minute, are a combination of 808, 909 plugins and or samples. The original show that we started a year ago had everything was run by D16 plugins and audio realism plugins, but we found, that some sounds were better created with samples and not with synthesized plugins. So we've just changed all the kicks and some of the, a lot of the mid-tones, like hi-hats, like especially 909 hi-hats, we weren't happy with the way they sounded from those plugins. So we took actual samples of a 909 and plugged them in, and it just, we felt that the sonic structure of the show was there was a bit of a gap in the middle. So, and that's how the show's been progressing, on an audio level. We take 20 channels of audio. We have we've just changed again. We were using a RME audio UFX audio interface with an extra 8-in, 8-out sound card. So we have 20 channels of analog audio coming out from these. channels, the green channels here. So you got my kicks, my percussion, my 303s, strings, and then you've got effects, and I can actually mix and EQ those on a Midas console. And then that Midas console is going with direct outs to a front of house Midas console. And so what my sound engineer does, he listens to the way I'm mixing on stage on his headphones, and then he approximates that mix on his board for the front of house, because he has every one of these channels also by themselves. So we did it like that, like a live band, because what sounds great to me on whatever PA or monitor system may not sound exactly like that front of house. So he's listening, he knows what I'm trying to do, he hears my hi-hats too loud, he's like, okay, well, Rich wants them too loud, and he makes sure they're too loud in the front of house or whatever. I have a lot of sends and returns too. So I'll explain more about that. Every instrument, every drum sound has its own channel. So right now, the brown is my 909. There's your 808. I have a different plugin for an 808, which some of their sounds sound better than the D16. Then you have some more samples. The 727, 606. RZ drum machine, and as you see, like all these, the reason I did this is because to recreate a lot of my studio work is done, very early on I had a patch bass, so I was patching things in and out, and my studio's always been like a modular system. So the routing of the effects and the feedback loops create a lot of the movement in Plastic Man tracks. So to get that movement in the live show, I decided to give every drum sound, basically every sound, its own channel, so that for every song I can have slightly different effects routings. And for that we actually developed a product, now it became a product called Capture. Does anyone know about this, Capture? Capture is another plugin, and it allows me to take a snapshot of my whole session. And it remembers every send, every level. So as I go into each song, I recall a snapshot, and all those sends and returns snap to a different position and give me the sound of that song. Here's my returns and sends. I've got a whole bunch of effects. Actually, the original Plastic Man show, when 1 year ago, we were sending some things out to modular synthesizers for some analog filtering and things. We've actually just got rid of that because we decided that the extra weight of taking these vintage things for some filtering and warming effects wasn't actually worth the price we were paying, because we were basically paying extra weight for every flight. So we've now gone to some digital filters and things. I've got my echoes, I love my PSP 42s and 84s. The way that kind of works is the last 6 effects I have control over them all during the show, but they're kind of the presets. So when I click into a song, they all go to a certain point and it sounds like it should. And then I can kind of manipulate those. And then the extra reverb and live delay, live reverb here are always off, and it's up to me to bring on and add further on top. And then touch 1 and touch 2, during certain songs, I route audio from bass lines or claps, whatever, and those go to an audio inbox of the visual computer, and we visualize some of the actual audio. But what this allows me to do is, instead of just having to visualize the whole mix, I can say, okay, let's just take the clap from this song, and every time that clap comes in, not only is a MIDI note, we can make a decision. Let's use a MIDI note of the clap to do something, or let's use the frequency analysis of the clap to do something different. So it's really flexible, and you can maybe get an idea now that for me, Plastic Man is a continuing project. What we've built here is kind of like a Mac PowerBook, our own circuitry, our own design, and it's now like putting in new peripherals or some new software, new sounds, and allowing the whole system to grow. And then you can see if I go down vertically, you've got in red each song, and then various different parts or arrangements of that song. And the green things tell me that the white ones are basically changes only in instrumentation. musical changes, and the green ones tell me that they go to different modes of the visuals. So in one mode, the rim shot may be triggering this thing, but it may not be in another mode. So there's, you know, when I'm doing the show, I actually have a preview monitor, and the preview monitor is from a camera at front of house, so I get to see exactly what you guys are seeing. And I'm constantly listening and watching, because it's not a show. Plastic Man Live, you can't always make the best decision by where you want to go sonically. You have to sometimes remember where you're going visually, or take it visually and let the audio follow. And you have to, some parts, sometimes they work really well together and you find a magic moment, and sometimes you can find something that sounds great but looks kind of shit. So this kind of gives me some boundaries, so it mostly always looks and sounds good. And then all this is being controlled by, I have 4 iPads, so I can click over with Capture to different presets for different effects routings. I've got Touch OSC for controlling frequency and modulation of 303s, decay times and things like that. And then I have Grid running for all the on and offs and things like that. So that's a quick overview of Plastic Man Live. If you guys have any more questions.